Hello and welcome to the Digital Learning Underground podcast. This is Michael Hanson, accompanied by Tony Highlander. And today we have a special guest. We have Jacob Chastain from Richland Middle School. He is a podcaster. His podcast is called Teach Me Teacher. He's had it up, I believe, his second season, doing extremely well with a large audience. So say hello, Jacob.
Hello, everybody.
So, Jacob, tell me, how many listeners do you have?
Well, at first, what's funny about that is it took a long time for me to figure out how to track podcast listeners, because on iTunes, they don't actually give you direct feedback, because iTunes is just reading your feed from your website. Mm-hmm. So it took me forever to actually figure out how to do that, but eventually I did. And monthly, we're getting about, right now, well, this is the 25th, and I'm at 1,700 downloads already, which is usually my monthly average. So I'm about to cross the monthly average. Every month I've increased at least a couple hundred. Well, not a couple hundred every single month, but last month we had over 2,700, and this one we're at 17. Last month was huge because we had Donalyn Miller on, so she gave us a big boost in listenership. But yeah, we're getting closer to the 2,000 mark being the norm, so it's rising.
That's a pretty good success. Could you imagine that when you started?
No, well, I mean, not really, because the original idea of the podcast was just to, you go to these meetings every month, right, with all the teachers, and usually they have a highlighted teacher or whatever, and they'll show us a lesson or something cool they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, God, there's a lot of cool teachers at RMS. Mm-hmm. And, I meet teachers all the time at trainings, and there's so many people doing good stuff. I was like, but I never get to talk to them for long enough to actually get enough. Uh-huh. So really, it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had an audio form where I just interviewed teachers at the school, and we just learned from everyone in the school? And that was like the original idea of the podcast. And then once downloads started happening, and then I realized that people, now we're up to 28 countries, all over the world. They're just listening. I was like, oh, well, I guess it's a thing now. So I started pulling in bigger and bigger names. But yeah, I had no idea that it was going to grow into what it's growing into.
That's fantastic. I was pretty excited. I remember when you shared with me that you were podcasting in your early, your infancy stages of your podcasting, and the staff was very excited about it. Miss Smithy at the time was telling me about being on your podcast, and today we spoke to another teacher who's like, "Oh yeah, I'm on there. It was let me see, 2 episodes after such and such." So I mean, you're making an impression on your staff by building that community. That's really, really awesome. So, so your initial goal basically was to just to find out what they're doing? Best practices, or?
Yeah, I love what I do. But you go to these trainings, and a lot of the times you talk to people, you read books, and people aren't in the classroom anymore, mm-hmm. right? And it's like, you could be the best, you can give the best advice, but if you're not in the classroom, it immediately hurts whatever advice you have a little bit. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but it means, it's not coming from the source. I want to know from the people who are doing what I'm doing, right? Who are seeing the same type of kids, who are dealing with the same issues, and that happened to be people in my school. So I was like, well, I'm just going to learn from them, because I'm going to learn something, right? I mean, everyone has something to share, and that's kind of been my philosophy on the podcast is everyone has something that they're doing well, right? Or they have something they're struggling with, and what I've discovered through my own podcast listening, the podcasts that I connect to the most are the people who are just honest about their experience. Like, we had a whole episode where myself and Lindsay Stewart were sitting there, and me and her were both like, yeah, we really suck at this, and this, and me and her were just brainstorming. And I was like, that's cool, because that's something you don't see. Everyone tries to act perfect all the time, but, teaching's not perfect, and human beings got a lot of flaws.
That's
true. And podcasting has let people listen in a comfortable way, and embrace kind of the mistakes that we all have and learn from each other before, it hurts us too bad.
Well, so those were your initial goals.
Yeah.
So what are your goals now with the podcast?
Every decision I make right now is about growing it, because we just keep getting more feedback, and more teachers from around the United States and other countries are listening. I get messages all the time from, I had a teacher comment from Australia, and he was saying, he was like thinking about quitting, and then he heard one of our early podcasts.
Wow.
And was like, yeah, man, you fired me up again.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and I was like, and that keeps happening.
That had to keep
and it's like, well, all right, I guess I got to keep going because, I've put out a lot of things out there in the world. I'm a creative person. I like putting things out into the world and seeing what happens. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the response has been so overwhelmingly positive, and there's growth happening. It's not a stagnant. And I really haven't put anything into it. It's just me doing the podcast, and it's just sharing organically. Like, I haven't done any huge advertisement campaigns. I paid the initial fee to get the website and stuff set up. But other than that, like, it's just been sharing cool ideas with each other, and it's going. So my goal right now is to get bigger and better names on the podcast to share and try to get to highlight voices that people don't get to highlight that much. Because, I could spend all day getting people who've published books on here, but I really want to reach out to the underground people and be like, let them have their voice. Because most teachers, are super shy about talking about what they do, right? They can stand up in front of kids all day, but the moment they stand up in front of adults, like, things change. Right. So I'm trying to highlight them, and really my goal is, like, I just want to empower teachers, because teachers are so, we're beat down by so many different things. You have, bad days in teaching, you have all these things you got to get to, and then you go on social media and there's people negative, like, there's all this negativity around the profession of teaching, especially in, the political climate that's happening. Everyone has different opinions or whatever. And my goal is just like, what? Our job is awesome. Let's share it and, like, bring some positivity into this place, because, like, it's too important not to.
Yes, and that's true. There's a lot of non-teaching duties that continue to pile up. So what are two of your favorite episodes that you've done?
Oh, man, there's so many. My favorite episode I've ever done was with Donalyn Miller. She's my guru in the sense that 3 years ago, I was teaching my class like any, what a lot of teachers teach their class. We just do a couple worksheets, whatever. And we weren't really reading books that often, in a reading class. And, our reading specialist here, Kate Nelson, she showed me The Book Whisperer. I read it in like a whole day and just gobbled it up, and then I changed my class like that week. Like, I went and reformatted my class. We started reading books more and doing independent reading program, and I saw the success. And last year, our STAR scores here, we were one of the only middle schools that went up for sixth grade reading STAR scores. Most everyone, the trend was down. So being able to sit down with her, she actually came to my house in the summer, because we contacted her and I was like, hey, we do this podcast, and she only lives in Colleyville, so she came to my house. We hung out for like 2 hours, did this huge podcast episode. Super brilliant woman. That one's definitely probably one of my all-time favorites. My other one that I really loved was our season finale of season 1. And that was when we talked about Ron Clark. And that's because Ron Clark was, if Donalyn Miller was the person who is my guru, the Ron Clark Academy and that whole philosophy of that school is like the group that baptized me, right? They completely changed the way I look at education. I was like, that's what we need to be doing. That's Mecca for me, is Ron Clark and their whole philosophy of how they do things. And it was fun doing that podcast because that's attracted other teachers who like the Ron Clark experience or go there and come back and they want to talk about it. And now they can listen to a podcast where myself, Lindsay Stewart, Chris Cruz, and Malin Bannister, we all sat down together and just talked about our experience. And that's led us to have other conversations with other teachers about the Ron Clark Academy. So those 2 episodes, those are also my 2 magnet episodes that brings everyone to the podcast. So
if you have 2 episodes you'd like people to check out, those are the 2.
Oh, yeah. And, if you're an ELA teacher, you have to listen to Donalyn Miller. Especially, she was our speaker here in BISD. And so if you're not on the Donalyn Miller train, you have to be there. And the Ron Clark train is definitely, there's a lot you can learn from that podcast. For BISD people, we also interviewed Dr. Clark, so that's on there too. If you want to get inside, if you want to get inside her brain and how she thinks about curriculum, that was eye opening for me too, and that was pretty early in season 1 when I was able to get her on the podcast.
That's impressive. I have to listen to that one. I didn't see that on the list.
Yeah, that one was fun.
Cool. So we've got listeners that are out there that the podcasts are new. They may be listening to this through YouTube, or maybe it's a link to a Google Classroom or something, and aren't familiar with the broadcasting system for podcasting. So if someone says, hey, you know what, I want to do something like that. How does someone get started in that?
Okay. If you want to do podcasting right, you need to have a website or you need to pay for, there's two ways you can do it. You can have a website where you upload your own media files, and then it's kind of like uploading a blog. There's an RSS feed. Mm-hmm. You have RSS feeds for your podcast posts. And what you do is you submit. There's a submit on iTunes where you can literally submit. If you Google submit podcast to iTunes, you give them your RSS feed. They check everything, make sure it's good. And then they start reading your website, every hour or so to make sure, or not every hour, but however often they do it, and that's how it gets on iTunes. So you don't actually upload anything to these other websites like Android or anything like that. It's just they read your website, basically. And you can only do that. You can't do it on like free websites like Weebly or Wix or something like that. It has to be paid because because a lot of them, they know people want to do that, so they put restrictions on there. If you find one, good for you. There might be one out there, but I couldn't find one. So I went ahead and paid for the actual website, my domain name, and all that stuff. But there's also podcasting hosting sites where you can just upload directly to those. And you can also do it that way if you don't want to run a website, if that's a little too scary for you. But the best way to do it, I use Blueberry, which is Blubrry. And on WordPress, if you're going to run a WordPress site, on my WordPress site, I just plugged in all my podcasting stuff, and it does it all for me. So there's no coding, there's nothing. I literally upload a file, and it all just kind of works out. And I get my statistics through their website as well. And that's how I was tracking my downloads and my listens across the globe.
Excellent. So, someplace to host, basically, to host your files.
Yes. Yeah.
It isn't free.
Yeah, it's not free. You can get deals. My initial thing, I went through iPage because there's HostGator, iPage. There's all kinds of hosting sites that'll host your website, but you pay for a domain name, which is like $10 for a year. It's very cheap, and then your hosting is like a certain amount a month, and you pay up front. So I got a promotion. It was like, I don't know, $1.50 a month or whatever. So with tax and everything that comes with it, was like $50. But now it ends up being, now that the promotion's gone, I pay like $100 and something a year just to run my website.
So what is your site?
The site is teachmeteacherpodcast.com.
Teachmeteacherpodcast.com. Well, I want to thank you for your expertise and your enthusiasm in what you're doing. I've noticed since Ron Clark that several of you have been dressing really sharp on campus. So
we talk about that on the episode too, why that is.
So if you want
to
teaser, check out Teach Me Teacher. It is on iTunes. You can also check out his website. We'd like to thank Jacob. Thank you for your time today. I know it's terribly busy during the daytime, and to take this time away, I know is precious. So we really appreciate what you're doing here with the students and with your staff to build a community of learning, and how much you've committed to the future of America. So thank you so much.
Thank you.